Okay, I was just kind of giving everyone a second to pop in,
All right.
but we'll go ahead and get started. I am Stefani Zellmer, and I'm going to be moderating this course on behalf of Steve Adams, Process and Practice and the Writing Workshop. So welcome to the class. Let me introduce Steve first by saying that Steve Adams is a writing coach and freelance editor in Memphis, based in Memphis. And for over a decade, he's coached writers at all levels, including me, from beginners to writers who have published multiple novels and made the New York Times Bestseller List. His nonfiction has won a Pushcart Prize and been listed as a notable essay in Best American Essays. He's won Glimmer Train Short Story Award for New Writers, been a guest artist at the University of Texas, and his plays have been produced in New York City. Steve's debut novel, Remember This, here's the beautiful cover, is going to launch this Tuesday, October 11th, and it's published by the University of Wisconsin Press, so you can order it there. I will put the link in the chat once we get going, or you can purchase it directly from his website, or no, from their website, and then at independent bookstores and the usual places online. So speaking of independent bookstores, this next Friday, Steve's going to be at the Southern Festival of Books in Nashville. And on the 17th, I think a lot of you guys are in Dallas. So on the 17th, Steve's going to be launching his book in Dallas at Interrobang. Did I pronounce that right? Interrobang Books.
Yeah.
And he's going to be there around 5:30. So if you guys want to come early and talk to him before he gets started at 6, he could, address some of the things he's going to talk about today. He's also going to be in Austin, which I'm excited about. I'm in Austin, so I get to go see him on the 22nd, where he's going to be reading and signing books at the Drought House, because it's his old stomping grounds.
Yeah.
So before I turn it over to Steve, I'll just kind of mention that I have a personal reason for wanting to moderate this. I was honored that Steve asked me because I am a former student. I hate to say former because I'll probably hire you again when I go through a slump. But it was under Steve's tutelage that I had my most prolific years as a writer. He coached me through 6 or 7 short memoir pieces. So I have about half a collection now from working with him. And then 2 of those pieces were published in respectable lit pubs, one of them in Hunger Mountain and another one in the Rumpus. So working with him was very helpful for me. And he also helped me complete the final draft of my novel. So wonderful writing coach, in addition to being a brilliant writer, very encouraging writing coach, and I can't recommend him more highly. So enough about me. I'm going to now turn it over to Steve. So Steve, take us through Process and Practice.
Okay. Thanks so much, Stephanie, for that. Really appreciate it. I also want to thank Blake Kimsey and Writing Workshops Dallas. That's a great organization, and I always like to support them. And thank you guys for coming to this. And so we do have a lot to talk about. The way it's going to work is I'm going to talk for hopefully 35 minutes, right in there. That's what I'm going to try to keep it packed in, because this is going to be kind of an overview and you'll adapt it to your own thing a little bit. I could talk hours on a lot of these things, but I want to kind of give you guys a structure to work with, and then again, answer some questions. So that's what's going to happen. If you have a question, just drop it in the chat and Stephanie will feed them to me as they come, once we get to that part. So I'm just going to jump into this thing. This will be recorded, Blake said, and you'll be able to look at it again, because I probably will be moving through this part of it fairly quickly. So just bear with me. But anyway, the idea, it's called Process and Practice, Developing a Writing Life that Supports Creativity and Productivity. And part of my big idea is that it's just, if you're, again, I've worked with people at a wide range of levels. And so I've seen what really works consistently with people. And if you can get yourself to where you actually have a practice, as opposed to practicing the piano, where you actually have a practice, which means like spiritual practice or religious practice or martial arts practice. It becomes a part of your life. It's woven into it. So you have your practice that you do that grounds you and get your work done, and then you go on with your life. So you're not always battling like, oh, when will I write? Or I'm not writing, or all this stuff. It's just wound in. It takes a little time and practice before you have a practice. Okay. So you have to make a commitment and show up until it becomes habit. And so that's the basic idea of what we're going to talk about, various ways. So it's going to, there are going to be like 5 points I'm going to hit. The first 3 is kind of the structure and the main part of it. But I'm going to hold my hands up to the camera. They kind of make a V. So the wide part, we're going to talk about scheduling and habit. And then the middle part will be, well, how do I design, a schedule that works in my life? How do I think about that? And then the bottom part of the V will be the nitty gritty, will be what, where, when, what do you write and when do you write it and where do you write it? So that's how this is going to work. After that, I will jump off. I will talk about distractions, external and internal, because we all got to,
Steve, I think I accidentally muted you. Can you hold on 1 second? Hold on 1 second. Okay, now unmute yourself.
all righty. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes. Whew.
Okay, good. So basically, this is where I'm just going to begin now. It's a good time for a break. Schedule and habit. The idea of having a schedule, and now I'm going to back up and say this too. This is not a one-size-fits-all deal, right? This is, I'm going to give you what works in my experience for like 95% of the people I've worked with at every level. So you take that and you adapt it to your own creative life. So anyway, you take that, you adapt it to your own creative life, and we'll go for, and I mean, because there are outliers, there are crazy people like Stephen King who do wild things. You don't want to try to be like them. You want to try to do what works for most people and then adapt around that. So, okay, let's talk about schedule. Well, how does it work? How does it support you to actually get yourself on a regular schedule? And the way it works is, I think these 5 different things about schedule. One of the things, if you're showing up, let's say 5 days a week, regularly, whenever, and we'll talk about how to think about that. But if you're showing up 5 days a week for whatever you can work into your life, an hour and a half, let's say, one of the things it will do is it will help you write through your doubts. It will help you write through good days and bad days. Because I'm an emotional guy. I'm an emotional writer. And one day I think I'm a genius, and the next day I think I'm an idiot, and the next day I think I'm a genius again. So I've learned that how I feel about my writing on any given day is really not that material to what's really going on. So part of my approach is to just try to break it down so you're focusing on kind of the day's task, and you just do that. And you don't believe in your work at all, but you're going to get through that page or whatever it is anyway. So that's the way you look back after a year and you've got 250 pages somehow magically, appeared. So it does that. Again, it gets you through your moods, however you feel about your writing on a given day, if you're showing up regularly. The other thing that it does is it keeps the engine warm. So if you think of a car that's buried in the snowbank and you don't drive it for 2.5 months, and you go out and you turn the key and it goes, and it just dies. And some people treat their writing kind of like that. The problem with that's that cold start. So you want to think of it, you want to keep the engine running. You want to go up and turn the key. You want to start the car up and drive it a little bit every day, or, whatever you choose, 5-6 days a week. And that, again, because it's so much easier. Trust me, the cold starts are tough. It's an inertia factor, right? You want inertia to be working for you. You want an object that's in motion to stay in motion. And the way that happens is by showing up regularly and addressing it. So if you've written the day before, it will be, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Writing's hard, okay? But it'll be easier if you wrote the day before. And if you wrote the day before that, because you won't be doing that cold start all the time. And again, I'm just picking the number 5 for this. But if you do it 5 days a week and you take the weekend off or whatever, you'll still be warm on Monday. It'll be fine. The main thing is just that regularly coming back to it. All right. Something else about schedule that that really helps you, because so much of my approach to this is trying to figure out what are all the little things I can do to make this easier, to help push it, right? So one of the things, if you're showing up that frequently, is it puts your creative work and your ideas and just the idea of writing in your subconscious. And so what happens is, let's say you're a morning writer and you get in your writing that morning and you're doing something later that day and you're driving to the grocery store and an idea pops into your head about what you're working in. Like a little hummingbird just shows up with an idea, boom, like that. And you go, whoa, I didn't even know I was thinking about it. Well, you weren't thinking about it. Your subconscious was playing with it and an idea appeared. Now, what I recommend that you do when that happens is you pull over. Don't do this while you're driving, but always have paper and a pen or your phone or whatever will make it easiest to get that idea down pretty quickly, because these things have a knack, like a hummingbird, of suddenly zipping away before you know it. And you won't even remember. You think you'll remember that great idea you had that evening, but you won't even remember you had an idea if you're me. So I keep stuff around always to write down on. Oh, and this is a good James Joyce story that I really like. He used to take these incredibly long walks where he would just walk and these ideas would percolate. And he had jackets. His jackets had pockets sewn into them where he kept paper and pen. So when one of those little ideas popped up, he could write it down. And so he probably had all kinds of paper stuffed in his jackets all the time. But that's the idea of why you want to get it down quickly, because it's kind of like free money. It's coming through the subconscious. So again, if you're showing up regularly, that's much more likely to happen. And the other thing that will happen that you may never be aware of, but I'm convinced it's true, is you will be likely to be working out your material in your dreams as well. So you'll be sleeping and some of that stuff will process and you'll go into your writing session the next day and it'll be easier, or something will appear you weren't expecting, so it just helps on all those levels. So that's, again, while I'm a big fan of a schedule. One other thing that's a little different is, but I think it's important, is that we all have this like creative part of ourselves inside us. Like I'm not a believer of kind of the unitary psyche. I think we all have a bunch of different parts of ourselves, and I'm sure I know I do. It's like a zoo at times up there. But the idea of a creative part of yourself, like for me, it looks like a 5-year-old boy, and it's kind of specific. And there's children have all this creativity in them, right? As you did, as we all did. And the thing is we're taught, and there's good reason for it, but to try to get a kid to where he or she can, function well in society and go to school, that stuff gets pushed down a lot. And, and you keep hearing it. No, don't play the drums, or don't go running through the mud and the rain, and, oh, you're all dirty. We hear that a lot growing up until that side of us can get squelched a bit because it gets told no a lot. So you want to have that part of you can access it. You want it to feel comfortable showing up and helping. And here's the deal, is it may not fully, again, if you don't have a regular thing going, it may not fully buy in that you're serious about this, because it's kind of, it's had some disappointments. So the thing though about, it means like parenting, so much of parenting is just showing up, right? And if you're showing up regularly when you feel like it and where you don't, that part of you will sense that it's safe and that maybe you're really on the level with this and was likely to start kind of coming forward more. And at a certain point, it'll just be in the habit of it. It'll just want to play it. It'll want to show up and do some work. So those are all reasons I'm a fan of a schedule, a regular schedule. I think it does help. Now, how do you go about figuring out how to make a schedule? Now, they need to be flexible to a certain degree. I like it. I like the idea of a set schedule that you adjust as you have to from your life, but you need something set. But you have to take what I recommend is once you get the idea you want to do this and you want to commit to giving this a shot, you need to look at your life realistically and say, okay, where do I have openings where I can work in a regular writing session 5 days a week. And so, for instance, if you're a lawyer and you're working 65 hours a week, it's going to be hard. Now, lawyers write books, but a lot of times they'll take off a year and do a lot of the work there. But you couldn't do it with that, but it's just hard. If you're a mom and you've got kids that are 4 and 2 and 1, it's going to be hard for a bit. Now, I get moms who find me after their youngest is in preschool, and because they suddenly realize, my God, I haven't written in 4 years, and they used to be a writer, and they want to get back on it. So they call me, and and we work on that, and we try to get them where they have some pattern that's working for them again. So that this stuff happens. You just got to take a realistic, mindful look at your life and see what are good times and how much time do you have to do this. So again, and if you, that's basically it. And then you figure out what your life looks like. Relationships too. You've got to deal with those. That's really important, because if you don't deal with those, it'll blow up your writing, sure enough, So just figure it out, think about it, and then figure out where can I fit something in. So now that we've done those two things, thought about this stuff and took a look at our lives, you go down to that and the bottom part of the V, where we talk about like what, where, and when do you write, the nitty gritty, and of figuring out how, what do you need to do that's going to work the best, and that's going to work regularly. So you look at, you need to get mindful about what works for you. We're all different, and you want to tune in. You don't want to be in denial about this stuff. You want to face it, but figure out how to work best with you and how your nature. So let's say I'm going to do working people real quick, and then we'll come to like well, you figure out, let's say in a perfect world, you have no job at all, or you work part-time, you have a lot of time. You need to figure out what's a good time for you to spend writing. How long is good for you? 2.5 pages? 2.5 hours. Is that good? 3, 1.5? You want to test and experiment with this stuff and see what feels right. And the same thing with the amount that you write. I am a huge believer in achievable goals. Achievable, I have trouble saying that. Achievable goals, because what I do see people do, and what people do is burn out before they find me, is they have these really ambitious ideas about what's possible. They're going to, write a novel in 2 months and all of this. And they overextend, they burn out. I'm going to write 7 days a week. I'm going to write, 3,000, 5,000 words a day. And it's just, they burn out, and then they get disappointed and they stop writing. So you really need to figure out what's comfortable, because the whole way this works is, again, it becomes a practice. It becomes something you live with and you stay with it, and you show up. And for me, I will tell you, it's low. When I'm working, drafting a novel or something long, I'm putting down new pages. I do 1 page a day, 5 days a week. And if I get my page in, then I can quit and I can go do something else. I can go watch TV. Unless I want to write a little more. So I'll write a little more if I want to, if it's there. And if I want to write a 6th or 7th day, I do that. I do that too, but the next week has to be 5 again. You've got to come back in this because it creates a pattern, and the pattern supports you, and you don't get so burned out and exhausted. So you don't want to overreach. You want to figure out what is comfortable so that you can live with this, and that becomes a part of your life. So let's think about if you have a job. This is something to think about too, regardless. Like, what time of day are you at your best? If you're a morning person, you're lucky because there are advantages. I'm not a morning person, but if you're the type of person who can go to the table, the coffee, whatever, the desk at 6:15 with a cup of coffee and be active and write till 7:45, again, I'm just making up numbers, you have real advantages. For one thing, you get it out of the way right at the beginning of the day. You've succeeded. Another thing is you come from, you've slept, so your brain is rested, and you've also come from your dreams, so you're in a bit of a creative state. So again, if you can do that, do it. And if not, you're like me, you got to find a time later in the day to do it. So if you're someone who can take, let's say you get a lunch hour, and because of your job, you can get an extra hour, take it. That's a pretty good deal, really, because you can eat in 30 minutes and then you can write for an hour and a half. The trick is you got to make sure to turn off all distractions. And make sure nobody at work is going to be bothering you, and just get away from all that stuff, because your brain will be in a work mode and you need to learn. And the more you do this, it's like you're like building grooves in your creative process. The more you go over these grooves, the deeper they get. Like, I can go into a creative process real quickly at this point. It just happens. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. So anyway, so that's something you could do. And again, here's the thought too, if you do a traditional 9 to 5 and you have to drive home and you're in a city and it takes you 45 minutes to get home, where normally it would take you 15, I say, see if there's a Starbucks nearby. There, you just throw a rock and you can hit a Starbucks. So you might try this if it seems like a good idea. You go 5 minutes to the Starbucks, you get a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and watch out for caffeine, because it's the friend, and it's the frenemy, really, right? It's great to give you juice to write, but you do not want it keeping you up at night. So figure out where you are with that. And by 5:15, you could be sitting down and starting to work. And then you work to 6:45, and then you drive home, you're home at 7. So those are all ways to think about working with your time. Also, again, what days of the week you could do. You just experiment. You could do 2 days on and 1 day off, and 3 days on and 1 day off, or Wednesday through Sunday. You can keep it flexible, but that tends to get away from you. So anyway, these are ideas to experiment with. You find something that works, and when it stops working so much, you change it. You do something else. All right. So let me think if there's anything else about that. Yeah. I want to tell you one of my great metaphors for especially writing long works, but any of this, whether it's a novel or a memoir, collection of short stories. I got to hang with some marathon runners one time, and one guy was talking to him. Well, how do you do it? How do you think about this? These things are 26 miles long, right? How do you stay with it? And he told me that you never think about the end. Because with something that long, if you're thinking of trying to run to the end of this marathon, you will collapse about miles 6 or 7. You'll just drop. So what he did was he would start off, he would look in the distance, and he would spot an object like a light pole, and he would just run steadily to that light pole. And then he'd look in the distance and see a tree or something, and he'd run to that. Then he'd maybe see a car, and then he would run to that. And so he did that over these 26 miles, just step, then another step, and another step, without having, and then the last step, of course, is the finish line, and he runs to that. So I think that's really useful for long work, because, you want to outline, you want to have an idea of where you're heading towards. But if you're sitting down on your writing practice day, and you're just trying to hurry to the end, you will not get there. So think about it. You simplify these things as much as possible. You think about that day's job, and you get that, and then you're done, and you come back the next day and you do that. And again, you may be able to write more than I can. There are people who write, several pages fairly easily in a session. Well, good for you. Do that. But again, I recommend not overextending it. And one more little tip on this, if you're up for it, like I talk about that creative part of yourself. I like the idea of an award. And that could just be a cup of tea, because there is a connection between the flavor and the sensual aspects of that and your writing process. So the more the more you show up and have a cup of tea or coffee or a cookie, that little creative kid may like a cookie. Yeah. So you will start to transition into a creative state because of the flavor of that without even thinking about it. I learned this about myself over about a 2-year period. I didn't even know it. And I won't tell that story because we don't have time. But it's just, you want to use every little thing that will make this more comfortable, more supportive, and just to build this structure that will carry you like a boat down the river of this creative process. All right. And so again, that's my basic structure, 3-part structure. I'm going to jump now off of that and talk about distractions. Because if you are writing a project, you're going to have distractions. It's just part of it, and some ways to think about it. I'm going to go immediately to family and relationships, because that's about the biggest distraction you're going to have. And again, if you're in a traditional family with people around you have to deal with, you're going to kind of need to train them that this is something you do. It will vary on the people, obviously, and how old kids are. But what I recommend is that once you figure out from all this other stuff I've talked about what time you're going to be writing, like ideally they're not even around, but that's ideal and not practical a lot of times. But here's what might happen. Once you start writing, you tell everyone, oh yeah, I'm going to write 5 days a week or 4 days a week or whatever. I should say that, you just have to figure it out. 3 days a week didn't work very well for me because there were too many cold starts. 4 was better, but between 5 and 6, that's a good one for me. And you have that free day if you need it. So anyway, if you're dealing with trying to train your family to accept this, because you have to realize you're taking time away from them. So there might be some little subconscious part of them that's a little bit threatened, and they might test you a little bit. Like suddenly, I don't know, your spouse would show up with a whole bunch of stupid questions they could have found out if they looked at it online. But, so just be ready for that. Or suddenly the kid needs a sandwich. They know how to make a sandwich, right? It might be those sort of things. So just understand kind of where they might be coming from. And what I recommend is to immediately try to keep the boundaries up, because so much of creativity and all this is about having good boundaries for yourself so that you get to take an hour a day, 5 days a week, or 2 hours to do this stuff that matters to you. And truthfully, it's good modeling for kids, because they realize that, their parent they value something enough to work on it like that. But again, if they're testing you, the thing is, I would just say, is just try to keep it in place, because you don't want to blow up, because once you blow up, they kind of got you. So if you can, just be cool and say, this is my recommendation anyway. You got to work with your own situation. But if you can say, oh, okay, I'll be done with this in 45 minutes, and then I can make you a sandwich, or we can talk about this stuff. And you send them away nicely, and they'll usually go away. They may come back, just do it again, and they will get used to this. And then it's training them, and they'll go, oh, okay. And the other cool thing is, if you're doing this regularly, if you actually are getting your work done, and again, I work with people who are so frustrated because they can't find a way to get their work done. But if you're going to be a happier person. You're going to have more joy and more stability to bring to the people in your life. And so you have to take care of them. You have to make sure they're getting what they need, or they will blow up your thing. And you want to have both. You're not going to give up one for the other. So anyway, watch out for those distractions. I'm calling the external one, and just work with it. No, it's not going to be perfect too. You're going to have to figure out and adjust as you go, and just try to stay cool. We get thrown off the horse with our writing. That's what I call it. Someone will come after 2 weeks, they'll call me and they said, I didn't get any writing done. I don't even know what happened. And then we talk about it, and I'm like, okay, here's what happened, and don't beat yourself up. Again, that's about the positive reinforcement. You don't want to feel guilty. You don't want to feel like I'm a failure. All of these things that people do, you just want to go, oh, I got thrown off the horse. I'm going to get back on the horse now and ride again. Because riding anything of any length is you're going to get thrown off the horse. It's going to happen. And that's, so just know that's a part of the process, and don't beat yourself up. And what will happen is you'll stay off the horse a lot less. You'll get back on it a lot quicker with a lot less, Sturm und Drang. And that's what you want. You want positive feelings about your riding as much as you can, because some days are hard, man, and you got to stay with it. All right. And the last thing I'm going to hit on is, because I mentioned the body. It's true. The body is a part of this thing. We don't think about this so much because we tend to sit and think intensely. But they did some research once, I read this, with chess masters at these big tournaments. And that they said these guys burned off, they said as many calories as like a marathon runner. I don't know, I wish I had this paper, but apparently they burn off an awful lot of calories doing that. And we burn off calories by this process. That's one reason you're tired after you're done, or you might want some food. Whole point being is you want to try and make friends with your body, because we sit still for a long time and it gets stiffened up. So if anything you can do, like take regular walks. I'm not saying you have to. I mean, if you can go to the gym, that'd be great, because you want to get the blood flowing. You want the muscles to work. You don't want to be all cramped up. So if you do a little yoga or take a 30-minute walk, 5 days a week, most days, it's going to help. And I'm also going to say, if you look at your diet a little bit, if you can make it a little better, you're kind of making a deal with your body. You say, hey, I'm going to give you some good food and I'm going to walk if you'll be still while I write and help me do that. I'm not saying, but you don't want to be a purist or anything, but I mean, maybe you do, but purity tends to collapse under its own weight at a certain point. But any little adjustments you can make along the way is to your benefit. And also sleep. Figure out how much sleep you need to, be alert and be able to go to this creative place, because it does take energy. And you just want to support it everywhere, all along the way, wherever you can. So anyway, that's basically it. And I want to say this too, because this seems like, wow, this is work and schedule. Well, I mean, it is all that, but it's just a little part of your day. And if this can become something that that works for you, if you can do it over time, it will support your life outside of it. It will, because it's a place you get to go. And for me at this point, and for a long time, it's kind of like my little sacred space where I can go and get to go to this place and create and work out ideas that have meaning for me. And I've had some rough times where, I lost a sense of who I was. But I could open up the computer and start writing, and I would remember, and it grounding for me. So I'm a believer, as you can hear by, the way I talk and the fact that I do this for a living, and I love to talk about this stuff. So if it's not the thing, you do this for a year. I've worked with some people who've written, they had one book they really needed to write, and I helped them through it. And they wrote their book, and then they were done, because it's like they just weren't, they didn't want to stay with it. And that's fine. Then you go, play the piano or do something else with that time. But for a lot of us, and I'm sure people watching this is who you are anyway. This is who you are, who you think you might be. So if you give it a shot long enough to get to where, here we go to the practice again, where schedule becomes habit, and then a habit becomes practice. That's kind of the way it works. You don't even have to try to make it happen. You just do it. And at some point you look back and go, wow, I'm kind of doing this regularly now. That's great. If you do that, it's going to support your life as well, in real ways. So anyway, so that's the basic overview of this thing. And I now open this up to any questions, or I can go off on a tangent about something else if you like. So what do we got?
Thanks, Steve. That was amazing. So like we said in the beginning, if you guys want to put your questions in the chat, I think that'll be the most efficient way to have Steve start answering some of these. Our first question is, do you set up regular times for research as well?
What do I do? Again, this is the things you have to figure out what works in your life. If you only have so much time, yeah, you got to do that, right? Because you only have so many, hour and a half of the day you can work on this stuff. You're going to have to do research. The way, because I'm a habit, I just need to write. In fact, the one thing about this promotion stuff is driving me nuts. I haven't been able to sit down and just write creatively for a while, and I got to get back to it. But so what I would do though, if I have the time, I probably would separate it because there are different parts of your mind are engaged for one thing. And I want to get in my creative work if I can do it. My next project, I'm going to have to do a lot of research, so I won't be able just to dive into it. But if you can split it up, I would probably do that. I'd probably try to write a little bit and then make sure I have the research time at another part of the day, or maybe on the back end of it. That's probably what I would do. But I would play with moving it around.
Great. Another question, should we be writing in some capacity every day? I'm kind of hearing every day, really?
Yeah.
In that question, I don't know if that's accurate, but that was the next question.
I'll hit it because people do. And frankly, when I'm like things are working in my life, I write every day. I do, but it's not my my achievable goal. My achievable goal is 5 days a week. And I can always write that next day. I mean, again, because I like doing it at this point. So if you can do it and you have a place for it and it doesn't burn you out, then I say go for it. Go for it if you can. And I work with people who, like, as much as I kind of like this real steady rhythm, because I think rhythms tend to reinforce themselves. But I do work with people, I mean, some very good writers who are more streaky. And so we try to use their streakiness a little bit, but still keep them regular.
All right, I was taking notes on that myself.
All right.
Somebody wants to know if you play music when you write.
I know people who do this all the time, and I can think of a reason to do it. And I can also think that, you know, what kind of music? If you do that, you want to pay attention to the type of music, because if there are lyrics, they may affect it, what you're writing, and they may, you know, infect it a little bit. And maybe you want that. So I don't know, jazz, classical, non words, but I mean, do what works, experiment. So anyway, I know people who do that and they put on a particular kind of music and over and over. and then it becomes like I was talking about, like the tea or the cookie, it starts reinforcing the process. For me, I can't do that. I do not want music playing, and I'm very musical, and that may be one reason. I don't want that when I'm trying to create new work. Although what I like to do, I'll tell you, I like to get out of the house and go to a coffee shop or a quiet bar where there are people kind of chatting as white noise. And that somehow supports my writing. I don't know why, but it does. So I don't worry about it. I just go do what works for me.
Great. I relate to this one. I get derailed by reading. That's my big problem. Any tips on that?
I'm kind of going to guess a little bit. In other words, I'll talk to you, Stefani, or this person can answer again. So I'm assuming you get sucked into like a novel and you kind of get consumed by it, and it's hard to get to your writing. That's what I'm guessing that is. It takes over your writing time, basically. So it's tricky because writers need to read. But again, those of us who have lives that, you know, we have to work and everything, there are only so many hours in the day. It's tough. And this is, again, where you have to really look at your life. So, and say, what can I do? Because if the writing you want to give writing priority, which means you just give it a place in the day so it knows it has priority. Oh, that reminds me, I'm going to go off on a tangent. Stefani, if I forget where I am, please bring me back to this. One thing that I've heard from writers is you know, you want to watch out that you don't put there's something more important to do than the writing. So I've literally had a client tell me, I had to clean the oven. I couldn't write that day. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You should see my oven, you know? I mean, or have to pick up the dry cleaning. Things happen. Things do happen that will blow up your day. And we have to do things. We have to clean the bathroom, right? But if you're putting that over your writing, you're telling the part of yourself that's creative that cleaning the oven and cleaning the bathroom is more important than writing. You do not want to be giving yourself that message. And that's an advantage of having a regular time that you show up and get it in. So I think I remember where I was with this idea about, because it's related. I mean, reading is we all got to read. It's so important. And yet, if we only have so many hours of the day and it's taking over the writing, and it might be easier than writing, right? It might be, to sit and read a wonderful book, as opposed to having to create something. You want to make sure that's why if you have your writing slot and you're getting that in, then you get to read, and you just might have to cut back on the reading a little bit. And you can give yourself, there's like, I think I'm sure there are people that are on this who've done the Julia Cameron Artist Way book. And she talks about taking yourself like on I think she calls it an artist date or something. And that way, that's one day a week, you go to the museum, or you can just go to the park and read your book. You just take a day off from this rhythm, and you do something that's going to feed you as opposed to ask you to produce in a way. That's a very long, loopy answer for that.
I have here's a question, and I had this on my list of questions too. Your book has so many beautiful passages about New York, and I loved that one paragraph about with the history of the Brooklyn Bridge. So clearly research is a big part of your process. And someone's asking, can you talk about how to approach a writing project that will involve research?
Yeah, I personally find research a little bit tricky, and thanks to you for whoever that is that's read my book already. Hooray! That's fun.
I said that part. That was me.
Oh, that was you. Okay. Well, thank you then. For one thing, I lived in New York during this period, so for me, a lot of the material is in my bones. I really love New York, and I just feel it, and my memories are really clear about it. So that's research. But what I did was, I think just bear with me while I find my way through this. You again, kind of figure out what kind of writer you are. And I have friends who love research. They love it. And in fact, their problem they get into is they love the research so much, they just fall headlong into it and they don't come out to write. They have trouble disconnecting from it. I have the opposite problem. I love to sit down and get the I want to write pages. I want to hear people talking on the page. And I won't it's harder for me to sit down and do the research, but I make myself do it. Again, I kind of dance with it while I'm doing a draft. And if I get to a place, again, my next book that I think I'm going to write is going to take a lot of research. And I know I'm at a stopping place where I've got to stop and I've got to do some research for a while, because I'll just write out there and make mistakes. I need to get more. But for me, there are people who do research and they need to get every single detail nailed down. And that's legitimate. And for me, I want to get the shape of it. I want to get the sense of things, so I'm not going off on a tangent and getting something completely wrong, writing a whole scene about something that doesn't exist, which happens when you look back at your novel and you're double checking things and you go, oh my God, I've got the wrong movie in the wrong year. This isn't going to work. And you've got to rewrite that scene. So it really is to an advantage which I would do, like, if it's me, I probably would get a solid draft down, would research along the way, research before as much as I think is needed before I can go down the chute. And then, because you'll stumble across things and you go, I need to find this out. So you go find it out. Great. We can do so much online right now. It's really useful. And then I get to the end and then I go through and I check things, because you do need to check things. Here's a hint, check your timeline. Get your timeline solid really before you get if it has complicated movement within time, you want to make sure that you have the right things happening in the right year, and that a year doesn't drop out in the middle of the book when you weren't paying attention. So it will help you in revisions. Okay.
I think what you just said kind of hits on this next question, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit more. So someone's saying, do I need to follow some writing framework, or do I just jot down my thoughts?
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about writing. Sorry, my brain just kind of went three different ways. writing framework for like if I'm writing a novel, not a short story, I can see the ending and I might just shoot toward it, right? But like a novel, I need a type of framework. No, I mean, it doesn't have to be really rigid, but like, I need to know kind of the shape of it, right? And where it's going to land, or at least the general idea of it. Research is about getting those details right. And so what I do is, like, if I'm writing along, I'm writing about the Brooklyn Bridge. I knew, hey, Whitman wrote about the Brooklyn Bridge. So I looked up, well, when did the Brooklyn Bridge get built? And I looked up the Whitman piece on Brooklyn Bridge, and then I got it, and I could just copy it and drop it into the work, and got the year, right? So when did the Brooklyn Bridge open? I got that there, drop them in. Now for me, again, I just really always recommend that people get really mindful and tune in of the way you work, and then work with the way you work best. So you might want to get a bunch of more of that, like, but I will write down, like, the facts of it, and then kind of plug them in and try to keep rolling. But if you're a research person, the research may help you keep rolling. So you just kind of have to play back and forth and see what works best for you.
Great. Any tips on writing with a heavy travel schedule? I'm in different environments all the time, which makes it challenging for consistency.
Yeah, this is tough. And this is, again, this is where you got to look at it directly and try and figure it out. Because as much as I love the regular schedule thing, everyone can't do that. And you're going to have to be probably more fluid, and you're going to pay attention when you're traveling and look for possibilities of when you can get the writing done. You might say, okay, what is my minimum? I'm just going to use mine, 5 pages a week, or, it might be an hour and a half of 5 hours of revising time. I don't know. And look for, again, if you're flying, well, I mean, maybe the plane, maybe when you're in between flights. I don't feel as inspired for some reason when I'm traveling, but I do it anyway because it's free time. You look at that, your environment's changing. So again, I'm just looking for any consistent you can find. Like if coffee shops, like if you're in a hotel, there's a coffee shop or a coffee shop nearby. All these Starbucks are kind of alike. So I don't mean to be plugging Starbucks, but that would be one thing. If you could just find, that's the thing, that those sort of patterns, like a consistent type of, I never thought about Starbucks this way, but I mean, again, it would be familiar. And then that could be like maybe a space that would invite familiarity, might help you create this. But anyway, you're going to have to look and see where it is, and then be flexible during the week or the month or whatever it is, and look for those openings. And I think the more you do it, you'll see where they pop up, and you'll be ready, as opposed to drifting away for half an hour and realize, oh, I could have written, so it's getting really aware of what's possible.
Great advice. So how do you handle different projects like poetry, memoir, fiction? Do they feed into each other, or do they get in the way of each other?
My answer is yes.
Both.
They do. I think they actually, though, happy answer is I think they do support each other more. The way I do it here's the way I do it. Whatever project I'm working on, that has my focus. And I won't automatically write poems, right? I mean, I used to write poems. That's not what I do anymore, but I won't pop off and do something different. I'll stay with that. Like, say it's a long project. And those of you who've written novels or full-length things, they really, you're traveling a great distance. So I often get tired in the middle of it, or just I can't think about it anymore. It feels like I'm spinning my wheels a bit. So maybe I'm a third of the way through or half the way through, and I go, I need a break. And an idea for a memoir, short memoir, pops in my mind, and I'll just go work on that, or a short story, and I'll go work on that. And it's like, wow, I got to finish something. I get, it's kind of like you get to take a breath, so it's fun. And then you're ready to go back into the big project. So I guess I figure I focus on whatever I'm focusing on, but once you need a break, you could write some poems if that's what you want to do. That's how I do it. Again, you have to test your own mileage, but that's what I'd recommend offhand.
This next one, we could fill up another hour answering this one, but I know you'll have something to say on this. So I finished 2 novels, and while I've had interest from agents, no one has agreed to represent me. I finished my last book a year ago and was so devastated about not getting an agent that I stopped writing and haven't written for the past year. How do you power through discouragement?
Yeah, I totally could talk a
A
long
whole
time
hour on
about
that one.
that. And thank you for that question. If it makes you, if it helps at all, that I feel your pain. And a lot of people here do too, who've done that. I will say this about my novel, just briefly. Um, I got a big agent for it. It's when I won the Pushcart, I could get attention. I got a big agent, and she was a very lovely person, and she gave it a shot. It was quick, gave it a quick, that's the way they are. I'm not $1 million guy. And I mean, she tried, but I'm just saying, if I'd had a younger agent, they may have stuck with it a lot longer and really, beaten the bushes. But I understand it. And again, I have absolutely no bitterness about it, but it was devastating. It was devastating. And it took me a while. And that's the novel that is getting published now. And I kept pulling it up and looking at it every year, making some edits, and realized I believed in this book. And so I'd make some pass, and then I'd throw it at maybe an agent or a contest, and then it'd get rejected again. And then I'd put it in the drawer for another year. But I just couldn't let go of this one. So I kept going, and I was telling people, yeah, I was telling people they're going to be burying me, and my corpse will be pushing this manuscript up at them and saying, "Take it, it's good," when I die. So and I just like, this thing happened because, and it's better now too, because it's been revised. So how do you deal? So in this case, it's a happy ending, but I have another book that worked. I know it was good, but its time wasn't perfect. And I got an agent for that. I didn't get a great agent. I'm not going to say any more on that. And it was probably a little late in the game. And then I saw this damn TV show came up on cable that's like stole my thunder for it. Just a coincidence. And I think all of that made it not get picked up in the time period where it could have gotten published and been valid. Right now, I would have to re-envision the whole thing. So that's about me, and just saying that this happens to a lot of people. Again, I don't want to discourage anyone from writing, because again, this is my church, man. I think this is like the best thing, and it's so good for us. So what I do with myself, because I don't know what's going to happen. There's so many factors in publishing, and I need to pull back, so I'm not doing the hour-long talk on this. There's so many factors in publishing having nothing to do with how good your work is, that can either make it go through or not. And a lot of the times it's not. So you somehow have to ride through it. And for me, the best way, and you might have to, again, have to walk away from it for a while, but to find an idea that you want to explore and come back to the writing and make it about the writing, and just do it again. Because if you've written 2 novels, this is value for you. It's doing something right for you. And if it makes you feel better, I have just the one that didn't get published. I have another one that didn't get published before that. And it had some flaws, but had interesting things in it. When people pick books, and this means agents, and they're all overwhelmed, they're drowning in submissions. And when they pick books, they're trying to pick something. It's like picking horses. There are 100 horses. They're going to pick one they think is going to win. And they're using quick judgment and things that you just don't have a lot of control over. And they don't either. And that's why we get this kind of random stuff that gets published sometimes. So anyway, that's such a near and dear to my heart subject. I've gone on about that. But I would say, understand, that's what I do for myself. When my disappointments, and believe me, they come, I go, recover, and try to move back to, what, it's about the process. I'm going to write the next one. And then it may well be, the next one might get published. And if it moves, then they're going to want to look at what else you've published too. I mean, what you haven't published, I'm sorry. You can bring that other stuff out. But the value in writing to me is actually, it's the process and the practice, to echo the title of this thing. So that's that.
I was just responding to a comment. There's been some question about writers groups. What about writers groups to share your writing and develop a style when you're first starting out? Do you have any recommendations for finding these in rural areas?
Oh, wow. I do. Writing groups can be really great. They can also be distracting. So much depends on who's in it. But a lot of times you have to go trying to find exploring groups, and then people will get in there and they'll splinter off and form their own groups. And it's good because you're meeting writers. So they can be really useful. If you ever get like a tight group, man, hold on to them with your life because they're valuable. How to do it? I'm not a genius at this stuff, but the obvious answer is online. See what's out there, because there are a bunch. I mean, it's a thing you kind of got to go through. It's kind of, you got to pan for gold. There's going to be some mud in there, and you want to shake the pan and to find that little gold nugget in that pan. So you may have to go through some, because they're much more general online. You could check out libraries within driving distance. That's kind of all I know. If you know any of the writers, of course you can form your own group, but it's just that general thing. You reach out and you try to figure out who are people I connect to, which is really a really important part of all this, as much as you can, because a lot of us are introverts. And then just see what you can dig up. The more time you spend digging around in that, it often feels like I'm not doing any good. But actually, it's like at a certain point you realize you actually have made some contacts. So again, search online. That's pretty much the best I've got. There are organizations too. I want to come back. There are organizations like Gotham comes to mind that have classes. That might be another way. You could take an online class somewhere and maybe connect with someone there, and they may have access to, if you make a friend, you can say, hey, do you know of any writers groups? So it's kind of like getting in and finding people and networking that way.
This is a really great question, I think. How do you separate the business of writing from the writing?
Oh my God. You're welcome to my world right now. It's some people are better at it than others. I'm not particularly good at it. Let me say the business part of it, which is as far as sending things out, querying, getting things in the mail. I have this whole chart where I have things that are out and in play at various times. I'm actually good at that because it's like I'm an accountant. So you separate that. You have your creative part, and then you have that, like whatever, your accountant, maybe get a hat you put on. I'm kind of a joke, but I like doing this sort of like physical things. But like, you put on your hat in your head, you're just going to deal with knocking things out. I'm kind of good at that. What I'm not good at is connecting and like the stuff I'm doing, promotion. I mean, it's going fine, but it exhausts me. And making connections, where can I get a reading, trying to set the stuff up. That's a whole different thing than just more of the accounting version of it. But I recommend separating it. Different time of the day, do it a different time of the day. And you'll probably won't resent it as much, really. But you got to get stuff out. You got to deal with this business section of it, but you don't want it to overwhelm the creative part.
Awesome. We've got a couple more minutes. I have a question. You were talking about when to write. I'm personally a morning person, so I love what you said about how you wake up fresh when you're still writing from your dreams, which is kind of why I do it, why it works for me. But how do you have any tips for how to inspire? Like, do you do anything to inspire yourself as a night owl, or like, what if you're someone who can only write during their lunch hour or after dinner when the kids go to bed? Like, are there tips for how to kind of inspire your thinking that you don't get if you write from your dreams first thing in the morning?
Can you have to play with all this stuff? I mean, somebody mentioned music. Maybe listening to some music before you go would be one way, something like that. Maybe you meditate if you meditate before you do it. So you rest your brain. Like again, lunch is tricky because you're going from this thing to the next, but maybe you just close your eyes for 5 minutes. And I mean, I used to do this when I was taking these tests in college. I would stop for a minute and just watch. When I was like, I'm exhausted, questions. And I'd watch the second hand just swirl around the clock for a whole minute. And when you do that, it seems like a long time. And after I did that, I was refreshed and could go in. So I play with that sort of thing. Again, have a cookie, have tea. Watch out for caffeine if it's interfering with your life. But I drink green tea because it's got a little jolt. I take a walk to my local cafe. I get green tea. I sit down. I change the environment. If you have kids, I mean, you have to work within the parameters, but I change the environment. That's a way that works too. You got to play with this stuff.
Awesome advice. All right, well, we are at 1 o'clock. Wow, we did that in exactly an hour.
Wow.
Does anyone else have any questions before we close out? I put Steve's, the link to where you can buy Steve's book directly from the University of Wisconsin Press. Again, it looks like this. It's beautifully written and plotted. As you heard in the intro, Steve comes from well, he wrote plays. So, he works in, we didn't even talk about your 3-act thing, but I can tell that that's how you think in reading your novel. It's not only beautifully written, but it's, it moves along and, it's very well plotted and it's hard to put down. So
Well,
anyway.
thanks. I worked real hard. Over all that time, I worked real hard. Okay, thank you so much. Hey, and listen, thanks so much for everyone for coming. And again, I believe in writing is just a way to make your life richer and better. And so good luck to everyone. It's tough, but it's hard things are valuable too. Like, I mean, a relationship, they're hard, but they give back to you. So if things kind of get rocky or you lose faith for a while, you just stay with it and get to the other side, because it's worth it from where I come from.
Yep. And you can't see the chat because you don't want to be distracted, but you're getting lots of thank yous.
Oh, hey, thank you.
Everyone found it super inspiring, solid steps, much appreciated, and hello from a fellow Memphian.
Yay. Hello, fellow Memphian.
And I just wanted to go through your schedule again in case you guys are in places where you can go see Steve in person. He's going to be on Friday at the Southern Festival of Books in Nashville. On the 17th at 6 p.m. he's going to have his Dallas launch at Interrobang Books, and he'll be there early if you want to talk to him beforehand. And he'll be reading and signing books in Austin on Saturday, October 22nd at the Drought House.
Yeah. Technically it's Draft House, but you wouldn't know that. It's spelled English spelling. So if y'all know the Draft House,
I was doing it wrong. I knew that there's
I did it for just till like 2 years ago. I was doing
Draft House.
But that's how they spell it in England for some strange reason. Yeah, thank you, and show up. I'll have a couple of things in the spring as well, but this is all we've got going for now. And again, thank you for your attention and good luck to everybody.
And someone was asking you for your contact info. What's your web address?
Yeah, it's thanks. Totally. It's steveadamswriting.com, all one word. www.steveadamswriting.com. So
yeah, I just put that in the chat too. So okay. Yeah, I bet people will want to reach out to you, and that's where to get in touch with him and read more about his coaching practice, which as I said, I benefited from so much and probably will again. So thanks everyone for coming. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Good luck, everybody. Once again. Bye-bye.
Bye.